We need new ideas. If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got, and we're in that process at the moment. We need new ideas and we need a willingness to change. Now, what are the levers of change? The most powerful lever is education. And not just in our schools, but education of society as a whole.
I think I've always seen poverty as limitations, basically, that are imposed on people so they don't have access to basic necessities. I think it's inequality and it's painful and it's oppressive. But I think I've always thought that poverty is changeable if we commit together, and I think that's really exciting.
But what is this actually about? This is about scarcity. It's about scarcity of money, scarcity of food, scarcity of housing. And there's some lovely economic research that says when you live in scarcity like this, your IQ is affected. You lose 17 points of IQ in terms of just spending all your life focusing on the problem. And if you know if something in your life that you're worrying about, you don't worry about anything else. So some of the things we need to do is reduce scarcity. We need to look at debt consolidation programs. When families spend $100 in rent for a Housing New Zealand house, and that's great, but they've got $400 debt repayment each week, nothing is going to happen. So we need to look structurally at changing the way that we deal with families in poverty, and we need to look at perhaps putting money up front rather than dwindling money out over the period of their lifetimes.
Talking with the economists, a lot of them had different ideas that conflicted with each other, which kind of made me realise that we're dealing with such a big problem that we all need to put our heads together and really think about how big poverty is. It really reminded me that it all comes back to people. I feel like so often we can get caught up with statistics and incomes and money, when really it's all about people and empowering them. So the speakers talked about placing money and resources in communities and just things around people to empower them to do what they need to do because they know best.
The government doesn't have all the answers. Civil society organizations and charities often know better at the ground what's going on because they've got the interactions with people that they're trying to help where somebody sitting in a government office doesn't. The people in the government offices have better data, but they don't have that on the ground experience.
We continue to talk past each other in terms of the conversation. We've got one group talking about poverty is not a problem because nobody's on the street. Well, there's hardly anybody on the streets who can't eat, and there's a whole lot of social service providers that we can turn them around to. As opposed to the other ones around, well, everybody should have the ability to contribute to the New Zealand society, etc., etc., and nobody would disagree with it. It's like motherhood and apple pie, but is that really poverty?
So while poverty is something that is recurring, and you see that, I mean, it can easily be an intergenerational thing, and the reason for that from my perspective is because of education, housing and health. Which I can go on and on about how bad those things are, but I'm actually going to flip that around and say that can actually be the solution. So what I think, from my perspective and seeing growing up in that community and having best friends that are in all sorts of situations, is that it's actually tertiary and housing that I think could be a solution. If you can actually improve the educational outcomes, then we can actually start improving everything else.
What do I hope to take from this workshop? Intersectionality is a term that's often thrown around the Tumblr sphere, but I think it's a really important concept. A lot of impoverished groups are segregated because they're faced with different issues, but really we're all faced with poverty and we all need to fight to make sure that we have a better society.
I am Māori. I am a solo parent of 3. One of my children has a disability. I grew up in poverty. There was alcohol, drug abuse, mental illness. My life was riddled with it up until around 4 years ago. The way that my life turned around and changed was because of connection, like we've already heard, was because of education, was because of community and support.
My background is I'm a Kiwi originally but spent many years living overseas and taught for 2 years in an equivalent of a Decile 1 school in London. That was a really personal experience for me, and I could see firsthand the impact that teachers have in terms of literally changing the life trajectories of kids living in poverty.
And moving forward, we need to really change our paradigms and shift from this thing of we're just poor and we suffer from income inequalities, education inequalities, to actually what education do we have that we can resource ourselves? What income do we have that we can resource ourselves? And where can we as a people, or as Tackling Poverty New Zealand, where can we change our perceptions so that, I heard it before, so that we're actually standing in the glass house looking out to source solutions for our people.
Tackling poverty is only a strategy. The question you must ask yourselves is, what is the outcome you want to achieve for those people who are in poverty? Because if you cannot answer that first, you cannot identify the range of strategies to help position them in a positive outcomes way. The question is not about tackling poverty. What we're focused on is what is the roadmap for empowerment for those communities, those families who are looking at achieving outcomes for their own families and in future generations. So the most important question here is the mindset. If you start with reductionist thinking, you start with a thinking of problem, the very families, the very people that you're targeting will continue to think like that. If you start to change your language, start to use aspirational language, then you'll start to change the way that they look at the world and that they do feel they have a contribution to make.
This workshop has taught me so much about the realities of facing poverty as a New Zealander. As a group, we've shared experiences, we've inspired each other, we've supported each other. We have the will and the knowledge, the solutions, and now all we need to do is take action. I'm inspired to use what I've learned and share it with my community and go back and start making the change. It's not finishing now, it's just getting started.